morning and or afternoon to everyone. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come to this webinar. Today we're going to talk about the very latest version of the CXE 8.5 Software Update 2 product. If you're familiar at all or watch our software history, you know we pretty much do a major release once a year in terms of a named release like 8.3, 8.5. But of course, during the course of the year, other things become important or get finished early, and so what we like to do are software updates along the way. Software updates aren't just a maintenance patch. These are true updates that add new features, functionality, compatibility to the product. So we're going to talk about one of those today, the 8.5 Software Update 2 that came out towards the end of January. And if you look at this slide, you see that the actual bullet point release, or the 8.5 release, came out in August of 2013, had a lot of features. We're going to talk a little bit just to highlight some of those features on a slide at the very end. And then we did, in October, the first software update that added some compatibility features. And then, like I said, at the end of January, we added some more features with Software Update 2. And hopefully by the time we're done with this, you'll have a pretty good idea with what went into the 8.5 release. One of the things in Software Update 2 that was important for us in the world as it continues to develop more and more focus on IP integrations in the unified communication space, we try and stay on top of that. So some of the things that we released in Software Update 2 included a SIP integration to the Cisco Unified Communications Manager system. We already had an IP integration to that. We've had it for years using their proprietary protocol called Skinny or SCCP, but we did manage to finish all the testing and documentation for a pure SIP integration as well. So now we support both those on the Cisco system. We also released a new BroadSoft SIP integration to their BroadWorks platform, and that had been out and in beta for a while. We finally got enough momentum on that and enough systems out there where we're comfortable doing a full release for it. As it stands today, the CX system can support up to 10 different types of telephone systems on a single system. That's not 10 phone systems, that's 10 types. So if I had 3 Avaya systems using a SIP integration, that's one type. And if I had the new BroadSoft integration with SIP, that's a second type. And then I might have had an older Meridian system using station set emulation, that's a third type. So since we're talking about types, we really haven't found that to be much of a limit. Where there was a limit for some customers was the fact that on a single call server, and the call server element for our software is the actual software that connects to the phone system. And we can have multiple call servers, but on a single call server, we were very cautious about how many different SIP integrations we would support. Largely this was testing. There weren't necessarily known problems with this, but we support a lot of phone systems, a lot of integrations, and to simply test everything out there was going to be a little bit too time sensitive for us. So what we did was sort of slowly introduced supporting multiple SIP integrations on a single call server. And now what we're comfortable saying is you can run any 3 of our SIP integrations, any 3 types of systems on a single call server. So today if you wanted the BroadSoft SIP integration, the Cisco SIP integration, and an Avaya SIP integration, all on a single call server, we're comfortable with up to 3 different types of SIP integration. Not just 3 phone systems, but 3 types, once again. And those types don't have to be SIP. Obviously, we still support a lot of native integrations to some of the older phone systems using TDM. So it can be any mix of TDM and SIP, 3 different types on a single call server. There's 2 other integrations we do that are IP, but they're not actually following the SIP standard. And one of those is the Mitel MiTi integration, and the other is the older Cisco integration we talked about, the SCCP integration. You can have those on a call server with 2 other TDM systems, but once you put either the Mitel MiTi or the SCCP Cisco integration on a call server, that's the only IP integration we support. Because they're not really standards-based, they don't quite behave the right way that we're comfortable in having multiple kinds of integrations. Now keep in mind, for both those systems, the Mitel and the Cisco, we also support true SIP integrations. So you could still put a Cisco SIP integration on a platform and have more IP integrations. It's only those systems using the older non-standard IP integrations. So once you've determined the 3 types of integrations you're going to put on a call server, a single call server can connect up to 10 physical phone systems. And that's a pretty large mix. We're not too concerned about that as a limitation. We support up to 20 call servers. So that actually says we could hook to 200 different telephone systems, although we have not found any customer yet so unfortunate as to have 200 different telephone systems out there. I'm sure they're out there. Hopefully one of them's on this call, and they'll call us up and give us a chance to see what we can do. But that's part of the expanded IP interoperability for the Software Update 2 package. One of the other areas besides integration we're always focusing on is security. Security is a big concern for everybody for all the reasons that you're all familiar with, and so obviously we spend time looking at the security of our product. And it gets more challenging because our product connects to other products, and now we have security issues with cross-product communications that we have to worry about as well. So in this last release, we added a new feature, and this is something that customers have talked to us about in the past. If we talk about voicemail, we kind of go back to generic voicemail for a second. I can leave you a message through voicemail. I can mark it as private. If I mark that message private on the CX system, you can listen to it, but you can't forward it to anyone else, a true private message. Now, if we step kind of a little closer to the future, or to the current, I guess, if you're storing your messages in your email server in Exchange, and I leave you a private message and it moves it into Exchange, we will mark that message as private. You'll see that it's private in your Outlook client, but unfortunately the Outlook client doesn't honor that. It says, yeah, it's private, what would you like to do? And you can actually forward it out to someone else. So it sort of defeats the process of having a private message. So what we've done in Software Update 2 with Exchange 2010 and above is made it so on a user-by-user basis I can select that if they get a private message, instead of putting that message into email like we are all their non-private messages, we'll put an email in that tells them they have a private message. It'll say you have a private message, and then they will have to call in over the telephone to get access to that message. So what we're doing is we're not trusting the email system to honor the privacy. We're simply saying, for that user, they're concerned enough about the privacy of their messages that if someone leaves them a private message, it isn't going to go into email, and that should deal with most of the concerns people have about that kind of functionality. So as we look at other things that are in Software Update 2, one of the things that for a long time we've seen a real move towards accessing everything from a mobile device. We all have at least one mobile device. Most of us have more than that these days, between our tablets, our iPads, our phones, etc. So accessing messages, if you store your messages in email, that's always made it easy to get your voice messages over the phone. If you leave them on our system, you still can get them from our native mobile client. That's just a picture of our native mobile client there. So I could, as a user, if I had a message in my CX inbox and I had the mobile client, I could get to that message and play it over the phone and forward it and delete it, etc. Up until now, you had to have a license to do that, a unified messaging license on a per-user basis. But this has become very, very popular, and it just seemed to us that this was a good thing to encourage. You do still need a license to have the mobile client, but once you have the mobile client now, you do not have to have an extra license to get to messages. You can now get to your messages through the mobile client without any license at all in terms of unified messaging, and it makes it much easier for users to deploy that. We also have a web client called Web Phone Manager that people have been using for years to maintain their mailbox. And prior to this release, if you had a unified messaging license, you could also get your voice messages from that web client. But we've gone ahead and lifted that restriction as well. From Web Phone Manager, if your messages are stored on the CX system as a user, you can get to them. There's no license involved. That basically gives us a free form of unified messaging that can be deployed for all the users on the system. We also, in this update, added another alternate telephone user interface. In deploying our systems when they're replacing legacy voice systems, it's always been a very popular feature that we can emulate a lot of legacy voicemail systems. So as a user, the first day I'm on my new CX system, if they bought the alternate TUI module, the administrator could have given me the same interface as an Octel Aria, an Octel VMX Serenade interface, a Meridian Mail, a Cenogram, an INTUITY AUDIX, Active Voice Kinesis, an Active Voice Repartee. We've always had a lot of interfaces. We keep adding them, and this software release, we've added it for the Adomo product. Now, the Adomo product didn't get really wide circulation. It was a product that was kind of still being deployed in the market in an early phase, and that company was purchased by Avaya. So the Adomo TUI emulation is also very similar to the Aura messaging TUI emulation. TUI. So if you're looking at replacing an Aura messaging system, the Adomo TUI also will get you very close to having a familiar interface. In that mobile client that we referred to earlier, we've added some enhancements. Like I say, there's a lot of work that we do in mobility. We've done a lot of things. If there's kind of a central message floating around for us these days, it's, we're recognized as the leading messaging product in this space, and as good as we are at taking messages, we're even better at completing calls. So there's a lot of things we do in the mobile world to make sure those calls get completed. And that's one of the reasons we have a mobile client focus. And as we're doing this, we add all kinds of features to the mobile client. So there's a couple of features that we just added in Software Update 2. If you had the alternate TUI that I mentioned before for the INTUITY AUDIX, and over the telephone you would now have a reply to all feature. So if you're structured with that TUI as a user from the mobile client, you now also have a reply to all feature from the mobile client. From that mobile client, you can now specify a future delivery of a message. We've always supported future delivery from the telephone interface, and we weren't really sure how popular that was, so it wasn't in our early release of our mobile client, but people told us that it is something they use and they wanted access to, so we put it into the mobile client as well. One of the things that we'll talk about on one of the last slides is in our first 8.5 support, our ADAM functionality, our AVST Total Office Manager. We added some really incredible features, and you'll see them at the end if you aren't familiar with them now. And one of the things we added was the ability for us to know your location based on your mobile phone. If you loaded our mobile client, you could build locations, and now our call routing engine would know you were in the office, or you were in your home office, or you were out on the road somewhere, and it could build custom greetings and handle how it routed calls based on that information. And the iPhone ability to have locations has just finally been finished and submitted to Apple, and it should be available in the iPhone native app download for our product probably within the next week or so, I would suspect. So now we support the location piece for that as well. We'll look at the location piece a little bit more in one of the last slides. While we are a software company, a lot of our customers and dealers really like the whole turnkey solution concept where, one price gets it all, maintenance, everything, which puts us in the business of selling servers, which puts us in the business of constantly testing and staying on top of that market. So in this release, we have another round of updates. Lately, we've been using Dell servers. We find them extremely reliable and a very flexible product line that fits the kind of slot that we're looking for. So we had two older servers, the R5500 LE and HEX, and we've just done a facelift for them, right? We've done an upgrade to the latest and greatest versions, the 7610 LE and HEX, and they're laid out kind of the same as the older ones. The LE is more for a call server or a smaller system. It has moderate capacity, and it's a little lower cost. It doesn't have as much horsepower or redundancy as the HEX, which would be for a larger system or perhaps for the system server control server. So it's a little beefier type of server. But both those are in our mix now in terms of what we can provide turnkey. Now, we simply provide these as a convenience. We are more than happy if the customer wants to provide their own servers, or if they're looking at deploying this in VMware. Servers aren't a requirement. They're just an option we offer because we know some people like that turnkey approach. The Dell server support standard has changed a bit. We offer support with the servers, and you'll find that there's two kinds of support now, and this is a requirement for some of our larger enterprise customers. Where prior, with a 5-day-a-week, 10-hour-a-day, kind of a more typical support contract, which we had available, that was okay for a lot of customers. But there are customers out there that, as a requirement, need to be sure they can get support 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And so we have an upper-level Dell Pro support now that's available on the servers as well. And this I think, meets customers' needs, and it makes everybody feel a little more secure. Servers are very reliable these days, and our product certainly rarely requires anybody to go to Dell support for anything. But for a larger enterprise customer that needs that security blanket, we now offer that as well. As we do new software releases, the unsung heroes, I think, in this, there's two groups of them. The engineers get a lot of credit, I think, because it's really visible what they're doing. But all the people that work in marketing and documentation and all those other groups, they have just as big a job every time we do a release. And particularly as we looked at going into 8.5, the amount of documentation, marketing collateral, and things we had to develop was staggering. And they do a great job keeping on top of it. And this is no exception. The software Update 2 release had the typical documents that we have, like the software release notice, the technical bulletin, the things that kind of talk directly about the release. And then in support of the features, there were new SIP integration technical notes, new data sheets for the software, new data sheets for the new hardware, updated software history release, and of course the presentations like the one you're looking at now, and obviously a complete new price catalog with all the new hardware pieces as well. So all of that is available. For those of you who are dealers, it's all available to you out at Partner Express. You can get a hold of all that. And those of you who are prospective customers, some of that's available out on the website, avst.com. And if you're dealing with one of our dealers, or if you contact us directly, which we'll tell you how to do at the end of the presentation, you can get your hands on all this collateral as well. Now, I told you we've done multiple releases, updates on the software 8.5, and the first update we did was Software Update 1. And Software Update 1 basically added some things to our original 8.5 list. And some of these were things that the timing made it such that it couldn't come out with the first release, and some of it were things that came onto the development table late in the 8.5 cycle. So the big things in Software Update 1 are support for Windows 8 clients and for Exchange 2013. So as we stand now, by the way, with Software Update 2, we support Windows 8 clients for everything that we do. For the admin clients, Outlook 2013, all of that is supported, and Exchange 2013 and Office 365 are supported as well. I mentioned before we added the reply to all for those users who were using the alternate TUI for the AUDIX system. And we added a really nice click-to-call feature for Link in Software Update 1. We do a lot of click-to-call. We actually have 5 click-to-call applications that come along with the product. Click-to-call is just a nice, convenient way when you're in a client and you see a phone number that you want to call, rather than have to dial it, you highlight it and you use our live reply feature. And we have that in our unified messaging forms that we put in for those unified messaging users. We have it in Web Phone Manager. And now we have a little application that if you're running Microsoft Link or Office Communicator, you can run this application at the client workstation. And now when they highlight anything, any entity in Link that has a phone number associated with it, there'll be a little button that says live reply. And if they click that, they'll be able to initiate a phone call. This is not making a phone call through Link. This is actually telling the phone system, this user would like to make a phone call, could you set it up? Your phone rings at your desk, your typical desk phone, outgoing call from the phone system bridges you together. This doesn't require a plus cal for Link or any of the telephony features. That's a completely different way of doing it. This is just a nice, convenient dialer package. Now, if we look at the core feature, 8.5, that came out in 2013, this, as I said, was one of our biggest releases we've ever done. There was a major amount of new structuring for the product, positioning for the product, and a feature set that actually took the industry by storm. We received numerous awards and recognitions for the 8.5 software. And it has a lot of things in it. Some of them are smaller pieces. Some of them are larger pieces. And we're certainly going to talk about the Atom piece in a slide here. We finished the branding. We recently, in the last year and a half, changed the name of the product from Call Express to CX. And as part of that branding, 8.5 kind of wrapped up most of that. But within Atom, the location-based services and the federated presence pieces were very, very big pieces. We'll talk about those. Multilingual speech recognition. We've had speech recognition on the platform almost forever, but now we can have multiple speech recognition engines, different languages running. We added a lot of functionality for those of you that use Google Apps in the cloud, and the web, kind of a mini web-based mobile administration client for those kind of mobile, those features that an administrator sometimes has to do when they're away from their desk that are time critical. And we supported single sign-on for people using SAML for a single set of credentials on their network. Atom was the big piece, though. Atom is the AVST Total Office Manager, and this is an interesting, both a trying to think of how to say it. It's both a product suite and a concept together. So if you think about the things we've done in our system in terms of over the years, the things we've added in. We've always been a leading edge provider in the unified communication space. So we were very early with speech. We were very early with unified messaging. We've always had very strong features in our products for mobile workers. And also the whole concept of connecting. Our connectivity to other systems in the market is unparalleled. And so we took all of that and rolled it together with some new features in 8.5 to build what we consider the most powerful mobile user feature suite in the market. And the industry agrees with us, and like I said, we've won multiple awards for this already. So if we take all the features we had before and add some new things, particularly the context-aware element. You know, we talk about taking phone calls as completing phone calls as being important. One of the things as we started looking at this, creating this feature set, we realized is in the voicemail world, we haven't done a very good job of handling calls with the most effectiveness possible. One thing we don't treat callers very well. You know, you call somebody, if you don't get through, you just typically hear, "Hi, it's me. You didn't get me. Leave me a message," which is really not very helpful. That doesn't give you any idea when that person would get back or where they are or what you need to do to proceed with whatever issue you're working on. And while we did have some features that would make that better, it required the users to be very active in re-recording greetings and changing settings on their phones and things like that so their calls would follow them effectively. And frankly, most users didn't bother to do that. So the goals in Atom were to complete more calls, give a much better experience to the callers, and make it such that the users didn't have to worry minute by minute what was going on. We needed to automate that process. And in order to automate that process, what we wanted to do was reach out into the enterprise and get other information that was available to make our application work better. That's really the base definition of unified communications, right? Is to leverage other platforms. So in the context-aware sense, we realized that while users don't want to record their daily greeting over and over, they don't want to go in and change their phone settings to route calls to different devices, there are things that they maintain in the enterprise, very, very consistently that we could use. And some of those things give us information now with Atom that make the call handling process much, much better. So if we look at a couple of those, one of the things we can do is we can read the user's calendar. The calendar is just full of great information. It knows where they are, knows what they're doing, knows when they'll be back. So by taking our Atom process and enabling it to use the information in the calendar, we now can do things like when you call, if someone's in a meeting, it can actually say, "Robert Johnson is currently in a meeting and will be back at 11 a.m. That is so much better than just a personal greeting, because now the user says, "Okay, back at 11, I can wait," or "No, I can't wait." And our product will give them better choices. After that, it'll say, leave a message, try another person. I mean, it'll really give that caller a much better experience. And from Robert Johnson's point of view, he didn't have to do anything with this. He didn't have to set his phone when he went in a meeting. He is maintaining his calendar, and everybody's pretty good at that. We're just leveraging that. So we're taking advantage of the context from the calendar. We do the same thing from Link and OCS. If you're set up so that you have Link, and we can connect to that for context, we'll know how to handle a call and create a greeting based on some of those settings. So an obvious one would be if I use Link to go into Do Not Disturb, then I could have a greeting that said, Neil Butler is not available, and we'll call you back later, or however I wanted to handle it. If you weren't in Do Not Disturb, but you stepped away from your desk and Link had you as away, I can just change the greeting to say Neil Butler is in the office today, but away from his desk, and then give the user call handling option. So these are sources of information that are there, free for the asking, basically, and we can do a much better call management process with that. Now, Link, is kind of everybody's presence engine, but honestly, it's not a very good presence engine. It does a lot of things fantastically, but in terms of knowing where you are, it's kind of a happy face, sad face app in the sense of you're at your desk or not. But there is something that knows a lot more about your location, your presence, and that's your mobile phone. So what we did with Adam that I think is a game changer in our industry, and I think you'll find this over the next couple of years to be something that everyone else is going to strive for, is we took our mobile client and built into it the capability of knowing where the user was. Now the phone, your mobile phone already knows where you are. It knows where you are because in order to connect to anything, it has to understand where it is. So at the very least, it's connecting to multiple cell towers and triangulating the location so it knows how to connect to the right signal, to the best signal. And that information's inside the phone. So using something called geofencing, we can actually peek inside the phone and know physically where this phone is. Or you can be connected to a Wi-Fi network. So if you're connected to a Wi-Fi network, we have a pretty good idea where you are based on that. So what we have is a location service where I can take my phone, and this is actually screenshots where I took my phone into the office. The Bothell office is our engineering office here outside of Seattle. And I said, let me build a location. I went in and I connected to our Wi-Fi, AVST SEA, and I said, when I'm here and my phone knows I'm here, you can tell Call Express I'm in the office. And just in case Wi-Fi's off a bit, I went ahead and ran geofencing, and there's now 2 data points that identify me as being in the office. I then took that device and went home and connected to my Wi-Fi at home, ran geofencing at home, built another location called At Home, and I now have 2 locations. I actually have 3. I have in the office, at my home office, or somewhere else. If neither of those locations is active, that means I'm not in either one, so I'm out. I'm mobile. Now, having that information means when a call comes in, I can have a simple call rule that says, during business hours, when the call comes in, first send it to my desk, then send it to my home office, and then send it to my mobile phone. But what actually happens when the call comes in is CX knows to say, oh, well, let me see if he's in the office, and it pings the mobile phone location piece. No, he's not here. Why would I bother ringing his desk? Let me see if he's at home. Does the same thing, sees if I'm at home. If I am, it rings my home office. If it fails there as well, it knows I'm not at home. I'm not in the office. Why would it ring those phones? It simply immediately rings my mobile phone. So the ability for location to determine where that call goes, and also by default, what greeting gets played. So in my case, if I'm at home, you'll hear, Neil Butler is working from home. Please say locate, try another person. It'll actually tell them where I am and then still let them contact me. So Adam was the main thrust for 8.5. It gave us an incredible edge in the market in terms of the things we can offer an enterprise customer in terms of completing more calls, giving a better experience to the callers, and wrapping it all up with a kind of a common user license that makes it much more financially attractive as well. So that was the big piece in 8.5. So you've seen most of the things in 8.5, Software Update 1, and we gave you Software Update 2 today. So now we'll see if you have any questions.
We do have questions. Okay, so the first question, let me just pull them up. Okay, this is for messaging. Is the private message feature programmable? Can I choose to have it in Outlook even if it's private?
Yes, it is a setting on a per-user basis.
Okay.
Now, the user can't change it. So this is something the administrator would have to change for the user.
Okay, next question. What is needed to configure the mobile client?
What is used to configure the mobile client?
What is needed?
What is needed? So on the actual mobile client side, once you have a personal assistant license assigned to your mailbox, then you go out to the relative app store like iTunes or Google Play. You download the app, and you put in a little bit of information. You need to know the name of the server supporting it, your mailbox number, your password. On the actual enterprise side, to deploy this, there's a web application that handles all this communication that needs to be installed on one of the customer's web servers. And those are the two pieces that would have to be put in.
Okay. The next question. We're currently running Dell E5504s, 5500-04s. No issue. Is there any issue with 8.5 SU2 running on that platform?
Probably not. I mean, what we do have to do in cases like this is, it isn't that this one server spec would run everything. So when let's say I'm configuring a new customer, I would have to know how many ports you had, what applications you're running, what's the architecture of your system, how many call servers you have, and that would tell me the class of server. And my guess is, if you're just going from 8.something to 8.5, you're not going to see much of an uptick in requirements for that. But it is something where for a good, a good reliable answer, what you want to do is get in touch with your dealer, and they'll get one of the sales engineers just to make sure that's the case. But we didn't come out with new servers because 8.5 requires a lot more horsepower. We came out with new servers just because of the cycle of the hardware. It was time to do that.
Okay. Next question. Is there a dial-in number to listen to TUIs?
Yeah. I mean, there isn't something that we just have up there all the time, but we have a demo system that we keep available. If you contact, if you have a dealer you're dealing with or one of the dealers in the area, they can get in touch with us, and we'll set you up a mailbox. We can set you up with any one of the alternate TUIs you want to listen to. What we also have are two documents that are really handy. There are documents that are a user guide that will show you, here's our keystrokes for emulating this TUI. And for most of the TUIs, there are documents that say, here's what you'd press in this one, here's what you'd press in ours. So they actually highlight the few little areas that are different. And we're happy to do either one of those to make you comfortable with how that TUI works.
Great. Next question. Is SU2 supported for Exchange 2007 SP3?
I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to switch on over to our product manager because he's the keeper of the keys. So Matt, okay. You want to take that one?
Yeah, we support Exchange 27 SP3, yes. With I believe we supported that with base 8.5 and above, or actually with 8.2 and above.
Okay. Next question for Adam and Federated Presidents. What is the underlying mechanism you're using to read the calendar?
So the calendar uses a different technology depending on which calendar we read. We can read Exchange and we can read Google Apps. And of course, both those are a slightly different technology involved. With the Exchange calendar, we're using their web services interface. So it's something that's provided by Microsoft. It's the same interface we use for unified messaging. It uses kind of native services that run on the calendar that have very little impact on the calendar at all. In the Google world, we're using the Google Apps API to make calls into it. Same kind of thing, all supported. We're not doing any strange polling method or trying to keep track of the calendar in our system or anything like that. They're just API calls that the vendor provides for us to get that information with a single call in.
Okay. Next question. When is the SX file for time of day and holiday going to be improved?
The
SX.
That's Schedule Express.
Schedule Express?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes more sense.
Oh, okay. I'll let Matt handle that one as well.
Okay. So it's a little it's a little off the path here from the 8.5 webinar, but just briefly, we're looking to improve Schedule Express. We're actually looking to eliminate the need for Schedule Express. As we speak, engineering's working on it, and I expect that you'll see vast improvements in the next major release, which will be CX 8.6. That will come out later this year.
Perfect. Next question's again about the mobile client. They're wondering, to be installed on a mobile device, does the user have to have a PA license? And does there have to be a web application on the web server?
And the answer is yes to both those. The way we control this is with a user license, a personal assistant license. Once the personal assistant license is assigned on that mailbox, when they put their credentials in, it will allow them, I mean, you can download the client, but you won't be able to configure it unless you have that license. And then, there's some tricks in communicating with mobile devices that, it's not real apparent to people, but while your mobile device is out there on the network and has an IP address, there's no way of knowing what that address is. So for us to be able to do things like push phone calls to you, we have to be able to find your device. And the way we do that is with a set of services that are provided by the vendors. Both Apple and Google provide a push notification server. So we have an interface application that runs on a standard web server, runs on Apache, on Linux or Windows, it runs on IIS, just pretty much the typical ones. And what it does is it acts as an interface between the outside data connections on a mobile device and with the Apple push notification service and the inside piece on ours. So it doesn't require its own web server typically. It just requires a small application to be loaded on the customer's web server.
Okay. Next question. How hard is it to add a second PBX? We have 2 Mitel 3300s and only one is using the AVST via MiTi.
So, it's not hard. It's a matter of, getting the answer to a lot of questions. Assume you have another PBX. It has a voicemail on it. I'm going to make up numbers here. Let's say it has 8 ports on whatever voicemail it's using. What you would do on your existing CX is you'd add 8 more ports of software license. Then you'd figure out what type of integration to use. And that's going to depend on the version and software level, of course, on your Mitel system. If it's MiTi, so you want a second MiTi integration, then you're going to have to add another call server to it. Like I said, we have a kind of a single MiTi integration per call server limit. Call servers are not that expensive. The bulk of our costs when we kind of decide how we're going to charge for our product comes from ports, the actual physical size of the system. So adding another call server probably is not a problem. What you want to do is involve your dealer, and it's very easy for them to ask you 4 or 5 questions and then get a quote for exactly how it would work and how much it would cost.
Okay.
Can I add to that, Neil, real quick?
Sure.
So I would actually recommend that if you're going to connect a second Mitel, for example, that you would look at using the Mitel SIP integration. So MiTi is eventually is kind of on the downswing. It's eventually going to be phased out and replaced by the SIP integration completely. So if you're going to do a new integration to a PBX, I would recommend that you look at using SIP for that connection.
Okay. Next question. Are there plans to expand the functions of the mobile administration? Talking about mobile client.
I love having Matt on board. I can say, Matt, why don't you handle that one?
So we would love to get your feedback as to what types of things you would like to be able to do via the mobile web administration. At the moment, there aren't any definitive plans to add anything in particular. That's where we're looking for feedback from customers on what types of things you want to be able to do, and then we can look at that.
And with any feedback you have, you can always email us at info@avst.com, and we will make sure that your feedback does get into the right hands. Okay, so the next question is on messaging. If you mark privacy on a message and you save your messages on your AVST server, not the email server, does it or does it not allow you to forward from your inbox?
It does not.
Okay.
And if I receive a message that's marked as private, I can listen to it, I can delete it, I can save it, I cannot forward it.
Okay, next question. What is required to install and run the web interface?
So if we're talking about Web Phone Manager, the answer is very similar to what it is with the mobile piece. There is a web application that runs on one of the customer's web servers, runs on Apache, on Linux, on Windows, IIS, all those things. And it's a fairly simple installation, and that basically serves as the interface between the web client and our services on our system. It can be deployed strictly internally. It can be deployed in your DMZ. It can be facing the outside. It's all using, standard HTTPS type stuff, so it's pretty safe. Most people don't have any issues with it. There is a scaling issue that, if you had 100 users or even 1,000 users, we're not really going to ask you much in the way of questions. If you have 10,000 users, then we're going to want to talk about a couple of things. We've got something called a message cache manager that makes it much more effective when there are that many users. We have sometimes a need to distribute that, to do load sharing across multiple web interface points. So the larger deployments would rate a discussion, I'm sure, but on the smaller ones, basically if you're the customer, your dealer will hand you a DVD, and it's got a simple installation instructions. You have to have PHP running on your server, but I mean, this is something that's very, very easy to deploy.
Okay, next question is on Atom. Does Atom utilize FreeBusy to read Exchange calendars?
Does Atom utilize FreeBusy? So Atom itself reads your status on the calendar, and I don't...
Yeah,
what happens when you build... Oh, go ahead. Okay.
I was going to say, I can help you out on this one. So, an Exchange calendar appointment has different statuses. It could be, you could be free, busy, and I forget the other ones off the top of my head. But essentially what we do is if your status, the other one is out of office. So what we do is we take a look at the calendar appointment and we look at that status. If you're available, then we ignore it. If it's busy, then we equate that to your being in a meeting. And if you're out of office, then we equate that to your not working, so to speak. And then we play an appropriate greeting based on that. So like, for example, like I said, that we equate busy to being in a meeting, so that's when we can present the greeting, you know, Robert Johnson is in a meeting and we'll be back at 11 o'clock. If your status is out of office, we can have that trigger a different greeting, such that it could say Robert Johnson is out of the office and we'll be back tomorrow, type of thing. So we do look at the status.
And when you set that up, when the administrator sets that up, they actually have choices on which of those statuses they want to have effect. So it's not just you turn it on and all this kind of comes at you. It's, okay, I'm going to connect to my Exchange calendar, and I definitely want to know about out of office. I definitely want to know about busy. Same with Link. You get to pick which statuses you want to do something special with. One of the things about Atom is it's so very powerful that sometimes it's good to sit down and kind of scale back your first implementation to make it real clear to your users what functionality is there. You know, as a software company, we really want to deploy all the things that all the people ask for. But at the same time, as a user, you don't want to deploy all those things necessarily. So if you're really interested in looking at an Atom deployment, you probably want to get one of the sales engineers or the salespeople on the phone and kind of go through. We have a kind of a here's how we best practices, I guess is the best way to put it, in terms of how you get that started in your enterprise.
Right. Okay. The next question, it might need to be answered offline, but I'll go ahead and ask it. If you have up to 3 SIP integrations, different types, how does each integration on the call server connect to the correct line defined for its TTS integration?
For TTS integration?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the TTS resources and the ASR resources, speech recognition, are in a common pool. So you don't dedicate them to integrations or to applications or to users. So the way it works is a call comes in and it hits a function that needs either TTS or a speech recognition. It will go to that common pool, and as long as there's a resource there, you'll get it. Now you can limit how that gets accessed. So in other words, as a user, if I don't turn on the ability to read email, then I'm never going to try and get a text-to-speech resource. As a user, if I don't give them a speech interface, I'm never going to try and get one of those. So you can control usage, but it isn't by dedicating resources at that level. So all those integrations have access to the same pool of resources.
Okay, and he actually just responded and said he meant to say it's, not TTS integration.
Oh, okay.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and that's a very common question, and it's a little confusing, right? Because all these calls are coming in on the same network interface card. But the way this works is we define integration. We define ports. So let's say I have 12 ports on a CX system, 4 of them for each of those 3 integrations. I go in and build an integration type, and I call it my Avaya integration 1. It's ports 1, 2, 3, 4. and it's looking for communications from this IP address, because when the Avaya in this case would send me an incoming call, there's identifiable features in that packet that let me know, oh, it's for this integration, and therefore that would only be using those 4 ports that I programmed for that integration. Despite the fact that SIP integrations aren't really ports like the old hardwired telephony type of integrations, the software model moved forward with that same concept.
Okay, we have a redundancy question that's kind of specific to the customer. And then, they have 2 servers utilizing CXE 8.2. The redundancy between these 2 servers aren't working as desired. And they're wondering, would this work with the 8.5 version? They're currently using CXE on the Mitel phone switch.
So we have to take that offline, because there's, without, by default, I wouldn't say there are changes going to 8.5. That being said, particularly in the case of certain kinds of integrations, and Mitel would be one, how redundancy works in its connections and support of the phone system is very specific to that phone system software level and integration type. So let's have that person sync up with us offline. We can get a little more detail on what they're looking for.
Okay, the next question, what Exchange web services do you use?
What Exchange web services? So I would actually have to offline get this person's name and send them our document, because there's dozens of different calls we use because we connect to Exchange for so many different things.
And in response to that, again, we'll make sure that we follow up with everyone offline that has questions that maybe didn't fully get answered. And we'll make sure to do that as soon as we're done with the webinar. So don't worry about that. You will have a follow-up. Okay, the next question, does SIP on Mitel support all transfer types, including confirmed transfer? And they're saying at one time SIP had to be blind and Mitel supported all transfer types.
I'm going to have to get back to that person without having the document open in front of me.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay. And last question is there a way to have full with Exchange without having Exchange as being the message store, i.e. stream voicemail from CX?
So the whole problem there is the definition of full There's so many ways people do that I can talk to these people offline as well. But just as a quick set of bullets, we can store the messages on Exchange. They would be in the same inbox as the email messages. They would play them from their email client. We can leave the messages on the CX system and configure their email client to play them from their client the same way, but they would be played from the network from CX. They would never be in the Exchange inbox. The difference being you'd have 2 inboxes in your client. Let's say it's Outlook. You'd have an inbox to that email. You'd have an inbox to that voicemail. When you double-click on a voicemail, form would come up, player bar, you click play, your phone rings, or it plays through your speakers, but that's doing it all off of the CX system. Those 2 are the server-based and client-based. We support both those, and on a per-user basis, the decision can be made which one is implemented.
Okay, and that looks like those were all the questions we had. We had a lot. That was great. Again, we had a few very specific questions, so we will get back to you offline, and we'll answer all the questions that you have. Again, we want to thank everyone for joining us. And Neil, did you want to have anything to add?
I just, all the time when we do these, I just thank people for coming. It's hard to take time out of your day to do this. Hopefully you find them useful, and if not, you should let us know that. You should let us know what kind of things you would like to hear. And if there are topics we haven't covered, if you feel they're going too long, they're too short, anything like that, let us know. This is a very active program for us. The marketing people spend a lot of time and resources in setting these up, and it's not any good for us to do it unless you come and unless you get something valuable out of it. So thanks for coming, and let us know how we're doing.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.